On today's show, the Hawks ran into a buzzsaw on Monday evening, falling behind by as many as 37 points in a blowout loss at home. We'll dive into all of what transpired, kind of the scheduling aspect of this one, what the Hawks could have done better, and much more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1838 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday, and today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you, as I always do at the top of the podcast, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you might find your podcasts. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you're watching it on that platform. And I have a feeling that it would be largely a sickos-only audience for this one because the Hawks fell to the Celtics by a final score of 123-93 at home on this Monday. And as we'll get into, obviously this is a lopsided result for Atlanta just 24 hours or less after a really nice win for the Hawks on Sunday. If you missed that podcast, by the way, if you're a new listener or whatever, please go back and listen to that show as well. It was obviously a little bit of a different tone, but a good win for the Hawks just 24 hours ago. But I would say this, it was an awful schedule spot for Atlanta, which I did kind of mention at the end of yesterday's show. Like, you know, one team having to go on a back-to-back with travel, and it was the Hawks. You're playing the reigning champions, a team that has a great system. In addition to great players, they have both on the Celtics roster, kind of makes for a buzzsaw in a lot of different ways. It was the only visit to Atlanta for Boston this season. And for like 16 minutes in this game, it was competitive. The Hawks were actually up 44-41 in this one with about 8 minutes to go in the first half. Then it was pretty ugly from that point forward. The biggest blow to the entire Hawks potential to win this game, etc., was a 34-9 extended run by Boston at the end of the first half to go from, again, being down by 3 to being up by 22 for the Celtics at halftime. That all but ended the game, quite frankly, but the Hawks were down by as many as 37 points after halftime. The biggest story, unfortunately, in this game, even beyond the results, is the fact that Trae Young left this game in the second half with what the Hawks are calling a right rib sprain. There is no official update beyond that. Quinn Snyder was asked post-game about that. He kind of deferred to what the Hawks have kind of put out there already. That's usually what happens with Quinn post-game. But, we'll see. Quinn did say that he's worn down for obvious reasons. And people kind of, it's only 8 games in the season. I understand that. But Trae is carrying a ridiculous workload, quite frankly, with the injuries the Hawks have. And he came in tonight averaging 38 minutes per game, which is way too many for a player, really any player, but especially someone who was having that kind of usage rate. So anyway, that's a big story. Hopefully not anything serious. We'll find out more on Tuesday, maybe into Wednesday on Trae. But before I dive into the ugly numbers of this game, I do understand, trust me, I do, that the lopsided nature of this loss is going to lead to some probably overreactions, and that's probably just that comes with the territory. But there isn't really a reason to overstate the impact or importance of this, of the margin. Like, yes, the Hawks lost this game. What I would tell you is that, you could debate how much it matters that they lost by 30 versus by 15 or by 8, but they were supposed to lose this game in some respects. Now, I already kind of alluded to this a little bit, but it was an awful spot. That does not explain a 30-point loss. I'm not saying that it does. The Hawks did not play very well in this game. Both things can be true. I said this during the game. If Boston plays their A game, the Hawks are not going to beat them in their current state in particular, especially with a bad spot. But also the Hawks did not play well, and that led to the game being what, coming into the night, just for a reference point here, and again, it's not always perfect, but the best indicator that we have publicly available for a projection is usually the closing line in the betting market. And the Hawks were 10-point underdogs at FanDuel in this game for a reason. Boston was on normal rest. The Hawks had a very late arrival last night after a win over New Orleans. And Boston is pretty much the exact team that you don't want to face when you might be having dead legs, because Boston runs their own stuff. They play with incredible pace, et cetera, et cetera. And that's before you even get into all of the Hawks injuries and the context there. And as we'll talk about more in a second, Boston shot the absolute heck out of the ball in the first half, and the Hawks definitely did not. And that shooting variance kind of almost single-handedly took the Hawks from maybe a break-even game state to a pretty ugly one in a hurry. In this game, the Hawks were 6 of 31 from 3. That's 19%. If that's all you knew about this game, if that's all I knew, let's just say, for example, I watched this game, but I haven't watched it yet. and before the game starts, someone tells me, hey, all I'm going to tell you is the Hawks are going to shoot 6 of 31 from 3 in this game. I would have predicted a 20-point loss, probably, or maybe even more than that for the Hawks, just on that before anything else. Because, look, Boston is a very, very good team, but they shoot the ball incredibly well from 3, and they take a lot of threes. And if the Hawks didn't take as many threes as you want to take, and they shot poorly, the recipe in this game, quite frankly, coming into the night to make it close for the Hawks to steal a win maybe, was to have Atlanta shoot really well from 3, and also for Boston to have a below-average shooting night. Both of those things would probably have to happen, or something weird have to happen to have the Hawks win this game. Because, again, 10-point underdogs, etc. Instead, it was the exact opposite. In the first half, Boston was unseasonably hot. Atlanta was ice cold, and there you have it. So there was more to that. It wasn't just that by any means. I'm not saying there was. But as far as the ugly particulars of this game are concerned, Boston does come in, even though they have some injury stuff right now. Porzingis was out he's been out all season so far. Jalen Brown missed this game as well, so obviously they were shorthanded. But Boston came into the night leading the NBA in offensive rating, so they have the best offense in the league and 3-pointers per game, and they were also like top 2 or 3 in turnover prevention, and that all kind of happened in this game. In the 3 quarters before garbage time totally took over this game, Boston shot almost 70% on 2s, and they shot 39% on 44 3-point attempts in 3 quarters. Then they only had 24 assists and only 5 turnovers, I should say. So those 3 numbers, like, that's just crazy talk. And yes, the Hawks defensively were not very good in this game. They pulled the plug in the fourth for obvious reasons. They only had 20 points. They were very clinical in their approach. I thought the Hawks did a pretty good job at times, honestly, defensively in this game. Much better than the numbers indicate, I would say. After I saw that, I thought that live. I saw that again after watching the game, post-game again in hastier fashion. But the Hawks had some bad moments too. Don't get me wrong. They were not great defensively. I'm not using the word great on purpose. They were respectable defensively at times in this game. The numbers did not bear that out because guys like Tatum were making contested shots. And like, he can do that. That's why he's a star player. But a lot of ugly breaks, I would say, towards Boston in that first half. And then if you run into Boston shooting like this, you're pretty much dead. And as those shots continued to fall for the Celtics, the Hawks did what a lot of teams do, especially when they're tired, and that the habits got worse and their performance got worse. And that feeds on itself over and over again. And that sort of spirals. And now I won't play the audio for it, but Quinn Snyder kind of alluded to that too. Like, they were tired, they ran out of gas a little bit, and then once they got down, there was not a second gear to go to, basically, in this game. They did a good job on the defensive glass in this game, actually, and they didn't foul very much. Boston was very comfortable, and that showed. And I think outside of Dyson Daniels, who is excellent as a perimeter defender, the Hawks are not good enough right now in certain aspects because of personnel. Like, I'm not going to pick on him too much in this podcast, but like, you got David Roddy defending Jason Tatum in this game. You got Garrison Matthews, who is playing hard, but is a limited defender. You got Trae Young, who's a limited defender, obviously. Even Ricochet, who I like defensively more than most rookies, is still a rookie, and he makes mistakes. And all those things, like, all that goes into one, and it was kind of ugly defensively at times. But I will say, even with all that, the side that was worse for Atlanta in this game was the offense. They shot the ball okay inside the arc, 54% on 2s. But I mentioned before, 6 of 31 from 3. They were 5 of 25 in the first 3 quarters from 3. So it wasn't like they went 0 of 12 in the fourth. Like, before the game was totally garbage time in the fourth quarter, they just didn't take enough threes or make enough threes. And that's been a problem all year long for this Hawks team. Like, that's, unfortunately, I kind of foreshadowed this a little bit coming into the year. Like, I was worried about the shooting. And part of that, again, is that they don't have Bogey right now. That's a huge, huge, huge loss for your shooting. But without Bogey and without Hunter in particular, they don't have a lot of shooting on this roster. That's the reality right now. And at this very moment, I believe the Hawks they're okay in attempts. They're middle of the pack at 3-point attempts this season, but they're shooting 34% from 3. And this is a team that can't really be built that way. This is an offense-first team, offense-first roster, and they're not shooting the ball like that. So that was a problem for sure in this game. They didn't take enough threes, but truly, like, there was no chance for the Hawks to win this game shooting like this from 3. Also, as we'll get into probably again later on, Trae Young had his worst game of the season. So that happens sometimes. Like, I'll try to save my rant for later. Before today, I would have told you, and earnestly so, that Trae Young has been excellent this season. Not just good, excellent. He was bad in this game. Pre-injury, he was bad. There's no way around that. That wasn't the only problem, but the Hawks are going to have trouble when Trae struggles. That's just the reality. And beyond that, the Hawks also had 15 turnovers in the first 3 quarters that led directly to 29 points. So they had 20 in the game, but Boston totally also punished those giveaways in this spot. The Celtics had elite frequency in terms of running in this game because they were able to cause turnovers and turn them into points. And that fed on itself as well. So I asked Quinn post-game, actually, about the offensive process and kind of what he thought about the way that they played. And he said immediately that the Hawks did not have the level of force. That's the way he's described it, that they actually had to have in this game. And that, I think, is true on film in this game. They didn't just make them feel you, to use a Nate-ism from back in the day. But in that answer, he also said that they settled for some bad shots, which I agree with, as a result of that lack of force. And it was mostly there early. They started scoring, as we'll get into in a second. They scored at a very high level for about a quarter and a half, not even a quarter and a half, like a 16-minute period. They were playing well on offense. And then when shots stopped falling, their force declined, etc. And it's all a feedback loop. Nothing is separate. I do talk about offense and defense separately on the show for a reason, try to give you a little bit of framing of what's going on. But when you have bad offense, it feeds bad defense because you're not actually scoring. And if you don't score, the other team can run on you. And same thing defensively. If you're allowing the other team to score late, or even earlier, whatever, it's harder to score when you're taking the ball out of the net every time. So nothing's independent, and the Hawks had issues on both ends of the floor in this game. But I strongly believe, process-wise, the offense was the bigger problem in this game. It probably felt like it was the opposite of that at times because the Celtics were making every shot in the first half. But I think on the whole, in the competitive portion of this game, it was a two-way loss for sure, but offensively it was a little bit worse. And I think Quinn answer kind of backed up to some degree in the post-game of this game. But anyway, I'll leave it there for now. We'll have more of the sort of game flow in this one, how it all unfolded in the middle of the game, and it was ugly at times. I promise you I'll get to all of that, plus my player evaluations at the end of the show. But first, a word from our partners on the podcast. Today's show is sponsored by Bilt Rewards. And listen up, renters. You ever feel like you actually are stuck in a loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Bilt Rewards comes in. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or a hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have also been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's JOINBILT, joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our URL so that you actually know that we sent you to them. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time, and I go to a ton of basketball games. It never gets old to me. The sounds from the court, the buzz in the crowd, it's always fun, and the memories are vivid for me and others, I'm sure. And at Game Time, you can get tickets for all kinds of sporting events, including basketball games and hockey games, and also find tickets for music, comedy, theater, and much more. They have a new feature at Game Time called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets also easier and better for you across the board. They filter out all the fluff they actually don't want and show you the incredible deals that you actually do want on great seats, so there's no wasting time with searches of thousands of tickets that you don't actually want. For example, there are awesome deals right now for the Hawks' first NBA Cup home game against the Wizards on November 15th, including a pair of tickets for $15 each, including fees right now at Game Time. That is an awesome deal, of course. There's more of that happening all the time at Game Time. I love the feature personally. They actually allows you to turn things on to view the seats through all-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees when you have that feature enabled at the checkout screen. Also, they have the lowest possible price guaranteed at Game Time, and you can take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account right now at Game Time and use that promo code. It's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's Game Time. All right, and we'll dive in now to how this game unfolded. And I thought early on, the Hawks were competitive. They contested some shots, as you might imagine. Boston still was getting up a lot of threes. They took 7 threes in the first 5 minutes. That's very normal for them, but also they were on pace for large swaths of this game to break records, basically with volume and accuracy from three. The Hawks had 2 or 3 long rebounds in the early going that led to runouts. They couldn't afford that, and that was a theme the entire game. They just could not slow them down in transition, which is definitely a problem. Also had a nice little run mid-quarter to briefly take the lead a little bit. Dyson had a very, very nice cut for a layup that Trae saw at a perfect time offensively in the first few minutes. As soon as that happened, though, as the Hawks took the lead, Boston had 7 straight points. And that happened a couple times in this game. The Hawks would take the lead, have a nice little run, and then Boston would just immediately answer them. And that was a theme of the back and forth. Rotationally in this one, only 9 guys played real minutes. They did go to Dom Barlow and Mohamed Gay at the very end in garbage time, but that was basically it for that. Roddy was the first up for Jalen, got the back at 4 minutes, generally speaking. When Dyson went to the bench, I mentioned this a little bit before, but Roddy went to defend Tatum. Like as soon as Dyson went to the bench, Jalen came in for him, and they just switched right away. They said, all right, Roddy's on Tatum. And I'm not trying to be mean to David Roddy. He just can't do that, and it's not his fault by any means. And look, Jalen is I think in some circles, an overrated defender, and particularly on the ball. But Jalen has the physical traits to go ahead and guard someone like Tatum in a way that Roddy does not. And Tatum, actually, a couple of times I thought in this game, Roddy had good moments as far as being in the right place. But even when he did that against Tatum just shoots over him because he's not that physically gifted. It's not very long, et cetera, et cetera. So it was the same thing against Sacramento with DeRozan and against New Orleans with Ingram. Bad results. Again, it's not Roddy's fault. It's a personnel challenge because of all the injuries. But when that's kind of just a tough situation for the Hawks to go into. Like they don't have a ton of options there. After that, it was Okongwu and Matthews and Wallace that played. I thought Keaton's defense was really good in this game at times on Peyton Pritchard. He got a little bit overzealous offensively a few times in this game, did Keaton. Some questionable shots. They had 4 steals, though, we'll come back to later on. They were down 5 in the first quarter. I think defensively, I even have this in my notes now that I missed earlier. I thought they were better than the results defensively in the first quarter. But Tatum had 16 points, and he hit 4 like off the dribble pull-up threes. And if he does that, like you're just in trouble, basically. I thought Jalen Johnson was a huge bright spot. He was properly aggressive in the first half. He definitely cooled off like everybody else did along the way. But he had an early 3-point play. I thought he was awesome in the first non-Trae minutes in the first half. Back-to-back drives for buckets. He had 13 points and 6 rebounds with like 10 minutes to go in the first half. Like he was really good at the outset. And the Hawks took the lead on an 11-3 run to begin the second quarter. The bench unit was actually on the floor for that one, which has not happened much all year. I shared some on-off stats earlier in the day on social media, and basically all of the starting lineups when it comes to Clint and Jalen and Dyson and Trae were all really good, and all the bench units are pretty rough on the advanced numbers right now. And that flipped in this game, at least for a little while in the first half. It definitely didn't hold, but it did happen a little bit at the outset there. And then Boston woke up and had this crazy run. So they had basically an 11-0 run right after that. Boston had taken 26 3-point attempts in less than 17 minutes to begin the game, which would have been on pace for like the league record, basically. And Garrison got a technical foul at one point for spiking the ball in frustration defensively. That's always going to get called, but he did that. And that was a free point for Boston that they probably couldn't basically do anything about that. Riche had a nice driving finish. I thought that was a bright spot for a 3-point play. He actually got a couple of really nice finishes in this game, but that was probably his best one of the year. Kind of a circle reverse finish that was pretty interesting to see. But the Hawks were up 44-41 with about 8.5 minutes to go in the first half. And then for the rest of the half, it was 34-9 in favor of Boston. The Hawks were never stopping them, basically, at that point in time, but they were able to keep up on offense for a while. But then as soon as the offense gave out, and it did give out, as I talked about earlier, Boston did not slow down. Also, the Hawks had 10 turnovers in the first half, and that just can't happen, and that was kind of death. Boston 14 threes at halftime, including 6 by Tatum in the first half. The NBA record is 29, which Boston did not actually end up challenging. They were on pace for a while to get there. But for reference on how many threes that is in a half, 14 threes in a half. For one, the Hawks made 6 in the entire game. That's one reference. And the Hawks have now made 14 threes or less in 5 of their 8 games. And Boston had 14 and a half. So pretty tough. That was their most points allowed in a half this year, 75. Boston was also 12 of 15 on twos, and they took almost 70% of their shots from 3. It was just a bizarre basketball in the moon kind of half for Boston, and the Hawks couldn't keep up after the first quarter plus. Second half will be very brief from what I discussed now. It felt kind of dire already going into halftime, and the Hawks didn't score for like 2.5 minutes at the outset of the third quarter. They missed their first 4 shots. That was kind of, indicative, I would say. It got to 19 briefly in the third, and then it wasn't that close again. A 15-2 run by Boston to open things up for good, basically. It was probably already over, but at that point, it was definitely over as the Hawks scored 2 points in like a 4.5-minute period. And at that point, Atlanta was 24 from three, and that was not going to get it done. They were down 33 by the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, and then that is when Trae left the game with the rib sprain late in the third, actually. The hope would be, I'll stop this now and just say, the hope would be that they're just being careful with Trae. But he did go to the locker room when he left the game in the third quarter right away. It didn't seem like Keaton Wallace, who came in for him, was like ready to go in. I think Trae, the way that it looked, got hurt and left the game. Maybe they're being precautionary. Maybe he could have kept playing. Obviously, he's smart enough to know the game is probably over at that point in time. So we just don't know. But that's one where they have to have Trae. They're already banged up significantly, but Trae's offensive engine capabilities are like so obvious on this team that it'll be tough sledding if he's missed any time. But we'll know more of that as early as Tuesday. And then really, it was garbage time for the entire fourth quarter, but especially the last 8 minutes. It was Mo Gay and Don Barlow playing the entire rest of the way. People were asking me why Larry Nance Jr. did not play. Basically, it's customary for guys like Larry who are basically too good to not play in general. You're not going to make Larry Nance Jr. at 31 years old play garbage time when you have Gay and Barlow. Like if they had no bodies, he probably would have played, but that wasn't weird. It was very normal. And not much to add in the fourth quarter. Like Boston did just basically stop trying in the fourth. They played no one that mattered to them other than Derek White for a few minutes. They shot 9 of 23 from the floor in the fourth quarter and 111 from three. That kind of made people not understand how well they were shooting until then. Because if you look at the full game numbers for Boston shooting, it actually isn't that good. They took a lot of threes, but they didn't make a ton of them. That's because at the end they just stopped having their real guys take them. So anyway, it was ugly. It was gross. And we'll leave it there for now. All right, more to come in a second on the player-by-player stuff and a brief look ahead to the rest of the schedule coming up for the Hawks later on this week. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and get ready to tackle the NFL NBA action this season with the folks at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and right now, if you're a new customer, get bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is so easy to use. It actually makes everything easier for you across the board, and it's the place to go to place all your bets all in one place. And they have everything that you're actually looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads to money lines, player props, future bets, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. The FanDuel app is safe, it's secure as well, and they cover the entire range of sports that you are interested in. That includes the NBA, the NFL, college football, MLB, WNBA, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so many more sports. Plus, it's also a great time right now to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel. That is FanDuel.com at $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is brought to you by HIMS, and things are important in life, but your schedule is also busy. Maybe you don't actually have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, though, you can get a personalized and convenient ED treatment without stepping foot outside of your door. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS also provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, as well as Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for those uncomfortable doctor's visits that nobody really enjoys. Plus, you can just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication will ship directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything that you need, from treatments to ongoing care. From hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED treatment that works best for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. One more time, that is hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions apply. See the website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, to the players at the end of the game here. A lot to talk about, but not much of it is positive. Everyone played other than Larry Nance by the very end of this one. Don Barlow and Mo Gay played 8 minutes each. Nothing really to talk about there. They were okay. They were out there. I like Don Barlow. I like Mo Gay, but not really serious minutes to talk about. Keaton Wallace, 21 minutes in this one, 6 points. Did have 4 steals, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. Offensively, it was kind of uneven. He was only 2 of 5 from the floor, 1 from 3. Defensively, I thought he was quite good, actually, despite the negative results for the team. He is a competent defender. He's a very aggressive one, which I enjoy. He's my kind of player. Checks a lot of boxes, and he's done his job and more in recent days. Okongwu was productive as an offensive player in this one. 18 points on 12 shots for Onyeka, 10 rebounds as well. So he was putting up numbers for sure. He along with Jalen Johnson spoke to the media after the game because they were 2 guys that actually had big numbers. I thought Okongwu was fine. Wasn't like I don't think he was quite as good as the numbers indicated in this game, but definitely better than he had been in some previous games where he had struggled a little bit. Garrison Matthews is shooting the ball great. 10 points on 5 shots for Garrison. Hit 2 more threes in this game. Defensively, he's being exposed a little bit more, but that's not necessarily his fault. David Roddy played 29 minutes, 11 points for Roddy, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. The Hawks actually +4 with him on the floor in this game. I'm not sure it's because of him, but he played fine. I think, again, he competed defensively. He made some nice plays offensively, kind of knowing where to be, some good cuts, made a corner 3 that I remember right now. Yeah, I thought he played fine. To the starters, it was kind of rough, obviously. Capella played only 17 minutes because he did not go back in the way he normally would have because the game was over in the second half. 5 rebounds for Clint, 2 points on 3 shots. He just, it wasn't his fault. No one was good, but he wasn't very good either. Ricochet, 15 points, which is more than he has been averaging recently, but 15 shots to do it. He was 5 of 9 on 2s, which is actually pretty encouraging. 1 6 from 3. 3-point shooting is not going well for Zach. I'm not worried, but it is not going well. So there's that. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 giveaways for Ricochet in his 30 minutes of play. Johnson had a big first half and then slowed down like everybody else did. 20 points on 20 shots for Jalen, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. Did have 6 turnovers, which is probably more than you want to see from him. And he was a game worst, -34. That's not necessarily him. Just didn't play that well as a whole, although he was good, like actually good in the first half. And then Dyson, 8 points on 9 shots for Daniels, 3 assists, 2 turnovers. Sorry, 1 turnover, 2 rebounds for Dyson. I'm looking at this now as I'm talking. Basically, yeah, there was not a single guy in the starting lineup that was efficient as a shooter in this one. Not one. That's a tough sledding. As I talked about earlier, it was the offense that was worse for the Hawks in this game. In fact, for the starters, they were a combined 3 of 20 from 3 in this one, and with only 7 free throw attempts. So that's pretty rough stuff. And then Trae, who I mentioned earlier, actually, this is crazy, but Trae actually had his career low in scoring. 2 points for Trae Young in 23 minutes. Obviously, he left the game early, but he was not playing well. He was 0 of 6 from 3, 1 of 4 from 2, 0 free throw attempts. Did have 6 assists, a couple of really highlight passes, but that was kind of it for Trae. He did not have it going at all in this game. We'll see how banged up he is, but career low in scoring, just a rough one all the way around. And no one was good in this game. I will just say one more time, Trae came into this game averaging 27 points, leading the league in assists, doing it on good efficiency, and people were acting like he's been bad all year long. I don't understand what you're watching. He was bad in this game. Don't get me wrong. He was bad in this game. But maybe it's just trolls. I'm not really sure. But he had been really, really good this year until today. And it all counts. But he was bad in this game. And the Hawks as a team, one more time here, they were, man, their true shooting numbers are so bad in this game. They were 6-31 from 3, 19%. And if you don't offset that out with elite 2-point shooting or free throw attempts, etc., I know that happened in this one on 20 turnovers. So it was a rough performance offensively. And they'll have a day off on Tuesday to get right. In fact, the Hawks and the entire league are off on Tuesday. Quinn kind of said with a half smile, we're going to go vote on Tuesday. We'll see you back here on Wednesday. We'll see. The Hawks will always have a day off on Tuesday anyway. It was back-to-back for them, so that's always a day off. But it's the Knicks coming to town on Wednesday. And while the Knicks got a lot of hype coming into the season, the Knicks have not been incredibly good so far. They are only 3-3. They lost tonight in Houston by 12. So that's not a unwinnable game. It's a much, much, much easier spot than it was tonight because obviously it'll be a normal rest situation, no travel. But of course, that all is contingent on Trae Young playing. So TBD on that. And if I know more about that on Tuesday, I'll do a podcast. But if not, I won't. It could be a day off for me as well. TBD on that. If there's stuff that will command a podcast, I will do one either on Tuesday or Thursday when the Hawks have these 2 off days this week in between games. And then over the weekend, after the game they play on Wednesday, I'll be going to Detroit to cover the Hawks, play the Pistons on Friday, and then a game on Saturday as well. So plenty to get to on the podcast. If you are a listener that made it this far, kudos to you. Thank you for being here. This is going to be much shorter than it has been the last couple of days because the Hawks have been playing some really entertaining back and forth, interesting games to discuss. And this one, not so much. So there you go. I'll sign off now. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. You can find us on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. I get this question all the time, but if people are still wondering about this, there are extra podcasts in the audio-only feeds that do not feature me. They are from the Locked On Sports Atlanta crew. It is the postcast. It should be labeled as such in your podcast player. I am still doing my normal allotment of shows. So it's no less for me, just an extra show on game nights. So if you want to listen to that, that's in the audio-only feeds. On YouTube, they have their own YouTube feeds. You will not see that there. But if you are a subscriber and people ask me every day pretty much about this, that is why. So hopefully you will figure that out at some point in time there. And please follow the show on Twitter /X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thanks once again, everybody. I really appreciate it. Enjoy Tuesday and all that fun stuff. We'll have a podcast at some point, either Tuesday night or Wednesday night after the game. Stay tuned, and we'll see you all next time.